Well, here we are at Windmill Hill Greenhouses and Garden Center here in Laramie, Wyoming. We're in the middle of fall planting season, and you can see some fall color here in the nursery. I spend a lot of time in greenhouses and garden centers like this. This is part of my job, and it's one of the most fun parts of it. It is a-okay to plant in the fall. Many people are very hesitant to do that simply because they're afraid that the roots will freeze during the winter, or it's just not the right time, or whatever. But the reality is it's a very good time to plant. The only thing that you have to be very, very, very careful of is not to let the root system dry out in the newly planted tree, or shrub, or perennial, or whatever it is you have planted. It is very important here all along the Rocky Mountain states to water in the wintertime. And I get very strange looks when I tell people that, but it is very true here. Winter desiccation or drying is one of the things that will kill a plant before anything else. Oftentimes people will plant trees too deeply also, and that's probably the second biggest killer of plants, no matter what type they are or when they're planted. What you always want to do is make sure that you don't plant the tree or shrub or whatever any deeper than it is now. You don't want to cover up any of the trunk with soil. So when you dig your hole, you'll want to dig it no deeper than about this deep. Actually not quite that deep, because as the soil settles after you water it and with the tree's weight, it will settle some. And so you don't want it too deep. If anything, raise it up a little bit higher so that you don't risk damaging the trunk or having it rot, because once the trunk rots, the tree will be gone. So winter watering and making sure they're not planted too deeply are two very important components. One other thing I might mention is that many people like to add some sort of an amendment to the natural soil when they pull it out, when they dig the hole for a tree like this. And we don't recommend that. The International Society of Arboriculture, which is the educational and certifying group that deals with tree care people, recommends that if you can't amend the entire area, the whole yard, don't amend any of it. This is actually a great time to buy trees, shrubs, and perennial plants simply because a lot of the prices have been discounted. There are some crab apples here, of which this is one right here. There's one of my favorites is called the spring snow crab apple, which has white blossoms on it in the spring. And the nice thing about spring snow is that it doesn't produce any fruit. And it's a dwarf crabapple tree as well. They're gorgeous. So if you don't want to have to mess with the fruit, but yet you want the pretty crabapple flowers, put in a spring snow. This is a willow, and it is related to cottonwoods and aspens. And these require fairly consistent moisture all year long. Willows, in fact, prefer fairly moist soil. So keep that in mind, and if you live in a drier area, this might not be the best bet. This tree here is a Baroque, which is actually native to the Rocky Mountains, and it's one of the few oaks that we recommend for planting in the landscape in Wyoming. They're wonderful plants, they're very hardy. Many people don't like to grow them simply because they grow very slowly, but that's actually a good thing. That means that their wood is hard. They don't drop branches like crazy, like cottonwoods do. They're also not as susceptible at all to very many insect or disease problems. So Baroques are a very nice landscape plant for use in Wyoming. Over here we have some other plants that I'd like to point out. One is this mountain ash. And these are very distinctive because they do produce the berries. This is actually not an ash tree. There is an ash right here, but the mountain ash and this is a green ash. They're two completely different families. They're not related at all. This is actually in the rose family. And this is a Winterberry, which is another very nice small tree or large shrub that you might want to use in your landscape. And you can tell the beautiful pinkish red foliage on it in the middle of September, where we are right now. So these are just a few of the plant material that's available here at Windmill Hill. There are obviously many other trees that will survive in our climate. This is just a very few of them. People tend to be stuck on cottonwoods and spruces, and those are wonderful trees too, but we do have a large palette of other trees that we can choose from, and we encourage planting a diversity of trees in our landscapes. I think we'll go and talk about some of the perennial plants, the herbaceous perennials that you might plant in your yard, and we'll go over there right now. Along here you can see some of these are all herbaceous perennial plants, and so this is an excellent example of what you can grow in Wyoming that will still be in bloom in September. All of these can enhance the landscape, and they're all available all throughout the state for landscaping purposes. Here we have one of the fall basics, the good old garden chrysanthemum, and these are favorites of all over the country. Chrysanthemums are incredibly hardy. They will be perennial for many, many years. They're fall bloomers, and the color array that you can find in mums is just huge, anywhere from white to yellow and pink to orange, bronze. They're just fabulous fall flowers. Back here we've got some ornamental grasses, which are kind of interesting too, to add to the landscape. What they will do is add some winter interest. If you have some areas that you'd like to see something green or something that at least looks like a plant that's alive in the wintertime, put in a few ornamental grasses. You'll be very happy that you did. Over here we've got some others that are ready to be planted this fall, ranging from Maltese crosses over here to some sedum. There's some scabiosa. A perennial favorite of many people in Wyoming is Russian sage. The Latin name of this plant is fabulous. It's called Parvskia atroplicifolia. The Latin name itself is worth buying one of these. Then we have other types of plants that have, this is lamb's ear, which has very fuzzy, people love to come and touch them. Excellent plant around here, very hardy. And then you have your cosmos, these are geraniums actually. They are related to the annual geranium that we all grow as an annual during the summertime. But this is more the genus, this is a perennial type of a geranium. And this is a potentilla, which is a cinquefoil, also in the rose family. And these can be small shrubs, typically don't get a whole lot taller than this one is here, but there are some white varieties as well. There's even some pink. Here we have a selection of shrubs on display, ranging from a sumac to a chokeberry, black chokeberry, or aronia is the Latin name of that one, to a honeysuckle, to more potentilla. This is another sumac here. And this is a little spirea, a dwarf spirea, a pink one. And those actually do quite well in the Wyoming climate as well. These are all suited for our climate, and all of these can be planted this fall before the weather gets too cold and before the soil freezes. The catch is the freezing soil. You want to get them in before the soil does start to freeze up for a couple of reasons. One, you won't be able to get a shovel in the soil if you wait too long, and two, if it's too cold and too frozen, it's hard for the plants to even get remotely acclimated this fall before winter really sets in. Evergreens haven't been talked about yet this afternoon. Over here we have a selection of evergreen shrubs. There are some pines, probably mugos. These are small junipers here. The trick with evergreens is even more important to keep these guys moist all winter long. The reason for that is everything we've talked about up to this point has been deciduous or will die back during the winter. The trees and shrubs most likely will drop their leaves. The herbaceous plant material will die back to the ground. These evergreens, however, will keep their foliage. Their needles will stay on all winter long, and as a result, they're very susceptible to winter desiccation or winter drying. And that can happen very easily with our very windy winter conditions. Those cold, dry winds will just toast plants like this, especially if the root system is not moist enough. So when planting any type of an evergreen, it's extra special important to make sure that the plant is kept moist all winter long. Another question that people ask me a lot is, well, do I need to water when there's snow on the ground? And the answer is no. As long as there is snow cover, you don't need to worry about additional watering. Where it gets tricky is when we have no snow cover on the ground, and you can the ground isn't frozen at the first few inches. And this may happen in January, February, sometimes March. And that's the time to get the hose out and make sure that you give your perennial plants a drink. That's a real good time when there's no snow cover, when you can get it, when the water can actually penetrate the soil a little bit, and the temperatures are, maybe above 35 to 40 during the day. That's an excellent time to water during the wintertime. Here was our last stop. We'll talk about a little bit of the bulb material that is available for planting in the fall. Crocuses Muscari, which is also known as grape hyacinth. These are little tiny bulbs. Crocus. And this is one of the largest ones here. This is an allium, which is related to onions. Gets about this tall. Big, huge flowers on top. And then also some of the material that is helpful to get your plants or your bulbs and corms growing in the fall is to incorporate some superphosphate or bone meal or even some bulb food at the bottom of the planting hole before you put the bulbs in. Daffodils and hyacinths and tulips are some of our favorites. Here we have paper white narcissus, which are the ones that you can force inside the home, and they have kind of an interesting odor. They're beautiful flowers and they're easy to force to get to bloom, but they do smell a little bit, so beware. Narcissus or daffodils is another favorite of many people. They're easy to grow, and as you can see by the pictures on the boxes here, the array of colors and sizes and shapes is just amazing. If you've ever looked at a bulb catalog, you'll know what I'm talking about. Hyacinths are another favorite. They're a little kind of a different looking bulb. They will often be purple on the outside. A bulb like this is similar to the tulips and onion, those sorts of things are all bulbs. And hyacinths are kind of distinctive because they often have the purple or reddish color papery coating on the outside of the bulb. They also come in a variety of colors, mostly pink, blue, and white. And then tulips are just fascinating because they come in all sorts of different sizes. Some are very short, some of the species types of tulips. These are more of the hybrids, which will get much taller, often up to 26 to 30 inches, depending on the variety of tulip. And they have a very distinctive shape as well. These are all very nice, very healthy bulbs, ready to be planted this fall, and they will bloom next spring. The reason we plant them in the fall is because they require the cold temperatures of the winter in order to set flower buds that will come up next spring. Without those cold temperatures, they will not produce flowers next year. As you can see, just like spring, fall can be just as productive. It's an excellent time to plant, and we hope you have good luck with all your fall plantings that you might try to do this year. And happy planting!